Not everything is scandalous, Eric. Not everything is scandalous. Absolutely. Every single issue around here to be some scandal.
It's something every day here in Canada. Welcome back to Moose and Loose. My name's David. In today's top story, we've got Jagmeet Singh. His cards have been shown. Yesterday, he openly supported Justin Trudeau, said he's not going to help the Bloc and Pierre Poilievre, the Conservatives, take down the Liberal government. He's not going to do it. And today, he's helping Justin Trudeau ram through this Bill C-65, which will have the government push back the election 1 week, saying it's for the Diwali Festival of Lights, when really it's to help a bunch of Liberals and NDPs get their pensions, like Stephen Guilbeault and Nita Anand. So first off, let's take a look at the bill itself here. So this is Bill C-65, and as they like to do, they put a whole bunch of junk in here, and then they tuck away at the bottom what they're really trying to do with this bill. So if we keep going down, and down and down and down and down. So tucked away in this bill is this bit with the October 20th, 2025 election date, and they want to push that back right here to Monday, October 27th, 2025, 1 week later. And all they really need is to push it back 1 day for a lot of these ministers and Liberal MPs to get their pensions. We're going to jump over to committee where Eric Duncan, Conservative, grills them on this. It's just wild, the lies they say to try to cover this up. What we're talking about here today was spurred on by this. Thank you, Melissa Landsman, for giving the heads up. A whole day after sellout NDP leader announced he's propping up Justin Trudeau's government, the coalition rams through Jagmeet Singh's pension bill, pension over country. So we're going to take a look at this meeting, and it is just disgraceful what is going on.
One of the things that was not mentioned in the opening statement when it comes to Bill C-65, I think a lot of Canadians are focused on one specific section that really shows, I think, the cynicism that the Liberals and NDP have rightfully earned from Canadians, was the changing or the attempt to change for this legislation the date of the election. I want to go back and talk, though. Yesterday, the NDP leader came out and gave unconditional confidence in the Liberals, and here we are 24 hours later talking about advancing what we call the NDP Liberal Pension Protection Act. One of the things that I had some concerns about several months ago was that former NDP MP Daniel Blakey, who was in the NDP caucus at the time, and Minister Dominic LeBlanc, there were several CTV articles that said they've been working together in conjunction of bringing forward this legislation. First question is, could either of you confirm how many NDP MPs or staff were briefed and provided information before the bill was tabled?
I cannot.
It was very clear in the CTV.ca article back from January, where he had said he'd been working very closely with the government. Quote, there's been a fair amount of work done. And the headline of the article was that says the two parties have been quietly in talks to table electoral form legislation before the next federal vote. My point being is that there is, a coordination was clearly happened beforehand. Whose idea was it to back the election up by a week from October 20th to October 27th?
So that's a proposal in the amended bill. What it speaks to is really the difficulty in today's multicultural society. You have a lot of cultural and religious observances that take place during the fall. It was found that October 20th, which was the fixed date election, or is the fixed date election because this bill hasn't passed, occurs at the same time as the Diwali Festival of Lights, which I believe is also occurring right now. So the question became how to find another date that better suited and didn't have that sort of conflict. What you try and do in these situations is you choose the date that is closest to the date. Like, you don't want to go too late into the season and get into December and heavy weather.
This is a bunch of bull crap. Diwali Festival of Lights. Give me a break. We don't pick our election dates based on that. You guys are a bunch of liars, absolute lying losers in our government.
Don't want to go too early because that would break into
So it was moved from October 20th as proposed to October 27th.
Correct.
Do you track when provinces and territories are scheduled to have their own elections?
Yeah, that's one of the things that brings into, and it's a very good point you raised, sir, that municipal elections, provincial elections, territorial elections are all things that need to be considered.
And here's the thing about, I appreciate you saying it's a good point, because here we had to move off of October 20th for the reasons it meant to go to October 27th. October 27th, there's a territorial election scheduled in Nunavut, which would impact tens of thousands of electors directly by having an election day on the same day. So I don't really think Canadians buy the argument that they had to be moved solely for that reason. And just coincidentally, what would happen, though, if the election date was backed up a week, is that several NDP and Liberal MPs who are likely to lose their seats in the next election would be guaranteed their pension because they, as opposed to missing it by a day, they get over by 6 days by doing so.
This guy came with the receipts, man. How do you even argue that? They're going to argue now that the Diwali Festival of Lights, moving the election date based on that is more important than having it overlap with a territory election day. None of it. Like, you can't argue that. Did they not even look in the book? Who decided this? Could they not have just taken a quick glance like, okay, when are all the provinces and territories having elections? Who gives a crap? Just move it back a week. We need to get Guilbeault and all his den of thieves, their pensions. Is absolutely appalling.
Do you not think there's some cynicism there, though? I mean, when you go and say, well, we did it for Diwali, but when there's a territorial election, another election taking place in Nunavut on the same day and was known, is that really the true reason?
So just to get back to the sorts of considerations that were made, one is just whether or not it would be a continuous fall election. You wouldn't want to break with summer holidays through Labor Day, so some of the days in September weren't very good. If we move forward a week to October 13th, then that would conflict with Thanksgiving, which I think most people would agree would not be a good choice. So the decision was made to make it October 27th.
That's a load of crap. Then move it 2 weeks ahead. Let me get this straight. So they can't move the election a week forward because that would be on Thanksgiving. But Justin Trudeau coming out with his big bombshell of foreign interference, blaming India on Thanksgiving is totally fine. Are you kidding me?
Considerations weren't anything more than trying to save their pensions and give the class of 2019, the group of Liberal and NDP MPs that are panicking to secure their pensions. And it failed miserably because many Canadians were outraged at this blatant attempt of what it was. I'm going to ask, though, in the PMO and PCO, you track correspondence that comes in from Canadians to your office, correct? Would you be able to provide us the volume of correspondence that came in? I'd be very curious. I know my inbox as a member of Parliament was quite full of anger and frustration from Canadians about this blatant move for securing pensions.
With his claim that the reason this was brought forward was to move the election date to allow more Liberal and NDP MPs who were elected in 2019 to receive a pension. Actually, there are 32 Conservatives who were elected in 2019 who would actually benefit from this, including the members.
No. Don't even try that crap. We know full well the Conservatives are going to win and they'll be in power for 4 years. So it doesn't matter. They're going to get their pensions regardless. Don't try to bullcrap Canadians with that.
We're opposite. So it's would actually benefit the Conservatives more than it would benefit the NDP and the Liberals. But I digress.
So we're going to stop this lying loser here for a second and just take a look at the stats. The stats don't lie. So first off, this loser on our screen here, her name is Sherry Ramondo. You can see here, Liberal. Surprise, surprise. What's also not a surprise is we've got Diwali, the Festival of Lights here, October 20th, 2025. So that is correct. It is on the same day of Election Day. Now, what's more important, though, is what exactly is the Diwali Festival of Lights? We look around right down here. It's a Hindu Festival of Lights, etc., blah, blah, blah. How many people does this festival potentially represent in Canada? The answer is right here, 588,000 or 2.3% of the population. Why would we move the election day to accommodate a festival that only represents 2% of the population? These Liberals are like the worst people ever. If we look here, this is an article. It says 80 MPs set to qualify for pension. As it says here, $120 million is the estimated lifetime pension for all the MPs. This is what it's going to cost us to move the election 1 week. 1 week back, not 1 week forward or 2 weeks forward. So she's right. There's 32 Conservatives, but once again, like I just said, the Conservatives are going to win. So it doesn't matter. All these Conservatives are going to get their pensions regardless. The Liberals have 22 people, including Stephen Guilbeault. NDP have 6 and the Bloc have 20, but the Bloc weren't included in these secret conversations. So at this point, we really shouldn't be pointing any fingers at the Bloc. They had nothing to do with this. Here's a full list here, including Anita Anand, and we got Stephen Guilbeault. Like, there's actual ministers on this list. I'll just scroll down here if you guys want to pause and read it or whatever, but Han Dong, the guy who colluded with China, he's going to get a pension too. Unbelievable. Instead of a jail cell, we're going to pay him for nothing. Stephen Guilbeault.
Sure, I think it's important to understand what we've heard this morning through the testimony. We've now got confirmation after several rounds of questions that the NDP were invited and provided briefings with the Liberals in advance of proposed changes to Canada's election laws. And I can clarify, I'm pretty sure Conservatives were not invited to those briefings, or the Bloc Québécois were not invited to those briefings. Canadians would be very surprised at the fact that we have two political parties denied at first to work behind the scenes, and then we found out they were provided information briefings. We're going to find out who was at those meetings when they took place, because it's completely unacceptable now for the NDP to say there's problematic parts of the bill. This proves what we heard this morning, that they were absolutely complicit and aware and agreed to the bill that was proposed, specifically the change of the election date that did nothing more to save and preserve their pensions. The NDP leader is going to get his pension in January or February of 2025. That's why he doesn't want to have an election now. But they complain that now it's problematic. It's only problematic for the NDP now because they got caught this morning. They were fully aware of what was happening. They knew what was in the bill, and it was only the backlash that they got rightfully from Canadians that all of a sudden now that they deem this problematic. How do we move back to conflict with so it didn't conflict with a cultural event with Diwali, but instead now would conflict with a territorial election? But here's the interesting thing, is that we didn't want to move it ahead to conflict or break with the summer was the line. Yet the Prime Minister had no problem calling an election in the middle of August 2021 when it seemed opportunistic and advantageous for him. So I think this morning we've heard all the reasons, confirmation that the NDP were in on this all along. And secondly, the rationale that the Liberals and the NDP are desperately trying to spin away was exposed.
This is a disgraceful situation here. Canadians will be on the hook for $120 million of pension payments if this is allowed to go through. These corrupt, fraudulent den of thieves, it's not even Trudeau's den of thieves, it's Trudeau's larger den of thieves, including Jagmeet and the NDP, are trying to fleece us and screw us over. It's time for us to rise up for these indespicable, disgusting excuses of politicians. This video is brought to you by Ground News, a platform that helps you see through the bias and news manipulation. Their app and website gathers related news into one place to highlight important perspectives often overlooked by mainstream media. Each story provides context on each source's political bias and ownership to help readers see how factors influence the framing of a story. Check it out by scanning the QR code on screen or by going to my link ground.news/moose in the description or pinned comment below. For example, this story, Jordan Peterson says he's considering legal action after Trudeau accused him of taking Russian money. With 15 total news sources, this story was mostly reported on by the right. Now, if we look at these headlines, it says Justin Trudeau testifies Russia funded Tucker Carlson and Jordan Peterson. They're trying to smear him with this, where this right-leaning article says Jordan Peterson considers legal action against Justin Trudeau over Russian money accusations. We all know this is another lie by Justin Trudeau. That's why I open up Ground News every morning to get an honest view of what's going on in Canada. Another feature is the Blind Spot, which showcases articles underreported by one side of the political spectrum. I wish more Liberals use Ground News because I think it helped them open their eyes to see how corrupt the media is in our country. There's also massive coverage of the upcoming November 5th American election, so you can stay fully informed. Their platform is the easiest way to see what's going on in the news, if we're being manipulated, and who's really telling the story, which is why I trust Ground News. It's independent and subscriber funded, so by subscribing through my link, you're accessing a better way to read the news while also directly supporting my work. To check it out, go to ground.news/moose for 40% off the Vantage plan, the same plan I use to research my videos.
Would you just stop, Eric? Like, honestly. Like, you just so you know, it sounds as ludicrous to everybody else as it does to us on this side. The reality is, Eric, you're the only one sitting at this table that would benefit from it.
Appel au règlement, Monsieur le Président, quand même.
What is Mark Gerritsen, the buffoon, even talking about? Why do they even have him in the government? He's got to be the biggest bonehead in the entire government.
Mr. Duncan didn't ask a single question of the witnesses in his last round. And to suggest that I am being more personal than he was is just simply false. And second, to Mr. Brotol's point, we don't speak through the chair in this committee. Everybody who's been sitting here has been directing their questions directly at the witnesses and receiving them back. And it is very common in committee meetings to have your time and use your time for your own purpose. So if I want to use my time to be able to be critical of other things I've heard at this table, it is entirely within my right, Mr. Chair.
Not a good look there, Mark Gerritsen.
I've been sitting here for an hour watching Conservatives utilize witnesses in this room to advance their own political partisan narrative and for potential gain that they perceive. Don't point at him, or anybody on this side. My reference on that was specifically about Mr. Duncan and the way that he's been engaging with the witnesses. Listen, what I can tell you is that Mr. Duncan and Conservatives and perhaps the Bloc are unwilling to accept the reality that a date was chosen based on what the witnesses have told us. Like, I've been sitting here and they said it was based on trying to observe religious holidays and getting as close as possible to the actual date.
That's complete bullcrap. You guys are trying to fleece us. You're a bunch of greedy shrews.
Like, we all heard the same thing. And then somehow Mr. Duncan interprets that to be something completely different, which is completely false. And so he's just trying to drive the narrative that they've been setting up. And so when the NDP, and I know I don't have to defend the NDP, they can do that on their own. When the NDP decide to say, oh yeah, you know what, maybe the Conservatives have raised a good point. We didn't recognize this, and we agree that it should change. Mr. Duncan's response is, well, you knew all along. Now you're trying to save face. Like, it's absolutely ludicrous and ridiculous. And Eric will sit here and demonstrate this kind of behavior over and over and over to try to illustrate this point. What I can guarantee you of Mr. Duncan is that there's never been a Liberal Party member who has been taken away in shackles and handcuffs for violating the Elections Act.
If you look at these women in the back, they're laughing at him this entire time because they just know this guy's an absolute buffoon.
Okay, I do recall a Conservative in that position. So with all due respect, is today the anniversary of that? Isn't that fascinating? So with all due respect, perhaps you can just tone down the rhetoric a little bit so that we can actually advance an important piece of legislation. If you're against the legislation and you don't believe in it, fine, vote against it.
This gives me a good opportunity to highlight a different type of body language we don't see a lot from Liberals when someone's lying. One of the ways someone hides it, not only, as I've shown in other videos, they cover their mouth, whether it's the darting eyes, but one of them is exaggerated movements with the body. So people will they'll make big grand gestures. What this is overcompensating for deceit. They're trying to fill the space. They're trying to create an illusion. They're essentially trying to mask the lie that is coming out of them. Some people cover their mouth to hide their lies. Some people do it in these big grand gestures like we see here with Mark Gerritsen. He is an A+ example of that. Some people it's pointing and shaking their finger like you see with Arif Virani. Mark Gerritsen is waving his hand. Some people, they'll be leaning. You actually see that a lot with Arif Virani as well. He always leans forward, does the pointy thing. Mark Gerritsen, it's these grand gestures. It's a way to take up more space and assert more dominance over the person, trying to get them to back down, thus trying to hide, to conceal their lie. He also pairs this with exaggerated emotions on his face. He's all like, Eric Duncan, you did this and you did that. It's all very animated. This is a clear tell of somebody who's lying. People usually don't act like that in everyday life. That's the subconscious of it. And as I mentioned in the previous video, unless you're CIA or Russian KGB or whatever, and you train this stuff out of your system, you don't even know you're doing this. You don't even realize you're giving out these tell signs.
Give us the reasons why you're against it. But not everything is scandalous, Eric. Not everything is scandalous, okay? I know Conservatives like to try to make absolutely every single issue around here to be some scandal, but that's just not the reality.
No, the reality is if you move the election 1 week earlier, taxpayers would save $120 million. You guys know this. You guys are terrible human beings for what you're trying to do to us. Again, there will be civil war in this country if you guys don't cut this crap out immediately.
And I think that your hyped up rhetoric is starting to catch up with you. So please just tone it down, ask questions about the legislation. And if you don't want to support it, don't support it.
This is absolutely unbelievable that these crooks have been working with the NDP for so long on this. This whole thing has been an absolute facade. Jagmeet tearing up the agreement. He had to tell everyone, tear up the agreement, tear up the agreement. Someone even counted them in the media. It was like 20 something times in the same day. He didn't tear up anything. The fact that yesterday Jagmeet Singh said that he is not going to be supporting the motion to take down the government. I got the clip for you here.
Does that mean that you will not work with the Bloc and Conservatives to bring down the government?
We know people are hurting right now.
people are struggling right now. They're having a hard time affording their groceries. They're having a hard time affording a place to call home. And seniors are just getting help with their teeth. I'm not going to let Pierre Poilievre, the king cut himself, and the Bloc decide when to cut these things that people need. I'm not going to let them cut the things that people need. So no, I'm not going to play their games.
Jagmeet is one of the most cowardly losers in this country. He is an unbelievable jerk. Effing buffoon, his turban is too tight. Jimmy doesn't give an F about Canadians. He only speaks to distract Canadians. One more day to get closer to his pension. That's absolutely it. His future after politics is to further the Sikh Khalistani agenda. Party's bankrupt and won't be able to fund a campaign. He shows up in a new tailored suit every day. So technically the NDP have paid off their debts. They have a big building downtown Ottawa. They mortgage it out and then they pay it off. So that's where they're at right now. So they could just remortgage off that building again and pay for their election. So they actually do have some money for an election, or they could have money. Why would they do that when he could just delay things and then get that pension? He is weak, definitely no leader. He's in this position to better himself and for no other reason. Pension before country. This guy's going to go down. This is his legacy. The guy who screwed over 41 million people for a pension. And Trudeau will go down as the guy who destroyed the lives of 41 million people. The comments in this thread make sense. Pension first. Look at this. So this is Jagmeet's riding here. What happened, Jagmeet? What's going on, buddy? I'm getting my pension by effing over the country. Who made this? This is hilarious. New Canadian music artist featuring hit songs Magic Carpet Ride, Let Your Justin Slide, Freeland in a Trans World. And his #1 hit, I Touch You Nightly. Rubber Meat on His Knees tour. We've seen the Liberals and NDP working together on this bill to try getting those pensions. We've also got this posted here today, which I think is very interesting. So you've got Bonita Zario. This is an NDP.
The member stated that he knows the negative impact of other important business being stalled in this House. Mr. Speaker, Conservatives are harming kids. Their inability to get anything done means that the Online Harms Act can't get to committee, so it can be improved to protect children.
So you see her basically attacking the Conservatives. This is posted by Arif Farani, Liberal. Like, they're very much still working together out in the open here for everyone to see. We know exactly what you guys are doing. Both these parties need to be dissolved for not properly representing Canadian citizens and intentionally causing harm to us. I mean, looking down the comments here, stop it. Bill C-63 has nothing to do with protecting children. Exactly. This is the online censorship bill. On a scale of 1 to 11, how big of a traitor are you? Many months ago when I was getting into doing this here on YouTube, I was asking the question, what's in it for all these Liberals? What's in it for them? Well, we know the answer now. It's the pension. They promised them these big pensions as long as they keep voting with Trudeau, with Jagmeet. That's what they offered. For the ministers, they seem to got bigger deals. You know, Guilbeault, Bolsonaro, etc., etc. All these scandalous deals. And for Jagmeet and the NDP, it's those pensions. They weren't in power. It's the best deal they could make. Keep Trudeau in power. Get that $2 million pension. Canadians have had enough of this crap, though. Like, it's beyond enough. I don't think Canada can take another year of this because something is going to break. The people will break, the system will break, both are going to break. It's not like the scandals slow down. They just keep getting more and more and compounding. It's getting ridiculous. It was already ridiculous a year ago. It's beyond ridiculous. And if it isn't corruption, it's home invasions, it's Palestinian protesters. It's just nonstop. Cost of living increase, cost of food. Canadians are getting hammered from every single angle here, and it's not going to last.